Hey, what is going on guys? Danny here. Welcome back to the channel and I hope you're all doing well. In this video, we're going to be talking about the latest leaks surrounding AMD's upcoming Ryzen 4000 series processors based on Zen 3, codenamed Vermeer. A couple of engineering samples got leaked by Igorslab and the clock speeds were shared for the parts, which makes them all the more promising. So before we get into the new leaks, let's just quickly recap the previous leak, which was also from Igorslab, so we can have a basis from how things have progressed and what kind of improvements we're looking at, if at all. So on the 6th of May of this year, Igor had shared some information from some BIOS entries regarding the recently released Ryzen 4000G part and a 16-core and a 8-core Vermeer engineering sample. Focusing on the latter here, he mentioned how chips with the A0 stepping were being tested and sampled, which was indicative of being one of the later stages in the manufacturing and testing stages before the retail steppings get fabbed. He mentions that the 8-core engineering sample had a base clock of 4 GHz and a boost clock of 4.6 GHz, while the 16-core part was listed with a base clock of 3.7 GHz and a boost clock of 4.6 GHz. At first glance, those clock speed figures may not appear to be anything significant or anything impressive over the current Ryzen 3000 parts, such as the 3950X, which has a base clock of 3.5 GHz and a boost clock of 4.7 GHz. So you're looking at a 6% increase when comparing the base clocks, but a 2% regression in regards to the boost clock. But keep in mind that the 3950X is a final retail silicon sample, so not really apples to apples, but if you recall from the previous year where AppySac had discovered a Zen 2 16-core engineering sample, that one had a 3.3 GHz base clock reported and a 4.2 GHz boost clock reported. So when you compare the Vermeer sample against the Matisse engineering sample, there is definitely an improvement there. Roughly 12% for the base clock and 9.5% for the boost clock. Therefore, already showing us signs of better clock speed capabilities when compared to the previous generation. Although there are a few other things to keep in mind, such as process node maturity, architectural improvements, and we also don't know what stepping that Matisse CPU sample was on. So now moving on to the recent leaks, and the first report from Igorslab was posted on the 6th of August. He starts off by mentioning that his source had already reported on the Vermeer chips being sampled on the B0 stepping, which means its quality is practically near retail level, which is good, because that indicates that a launch or release is near. He was also able to extract new clock speed figures from the 16-core sample, and it's reported that it has a base clock of 3.5 GHz, which is a slight regression from the previous engineering sample, but has a boost clock of 4.8 GHz, so there is a bit of an improvement there, albeit nothing drastic. And we already have products from AMD such as the refreshed Matisse 8-core and 12-core models like the 3800 XT and 3900 XT, which already boost to 4.7 GHz. So a mere 100 MHz improvement isn't surprising. In this report, he also talks about a new upcoming feature AMD will introduce with the Ryzen 4000 series that will allow for per-core voltage control, which might help trying to achieve a really fine-tuned overclock. Overclocking has actually gone through quite the change this past year because of how the chiplet design that AMD has incorporated with their new CPUs works. You're not just looking at dialing in a multiplier and setting a static voltage parameter and then, calling it a day. You can do so much more these days, from CCX overclocking, CCD overclocking, PBO and auto OC offsets, and more. But I won't be focusing too much on this topic, as I generally like for these features to be actually officially unveiled by the vendor, so we'll have more information and can talk more in depth about it. But this is a feature that also Intel just recently released with their 10th generation CPUs as well, so I'm thinking AMD is just following suit here. Next, we have the second leak, which again pertains to leaked engineering samples with reported clock speed figures, both of which are 16-core parts. The first part with the listed OPN indicates a boost clock of 3.6 GHz base and 4.6 GHz for the boost. The second part is where things start to get really interesting and exciting, as we're looking at a part here which has a base clock of 3.7 GHz, so we're back up to 100 MHz, but this sample here has a boost clock of 4.9 GHz. If these entries are legitimate, we can take this as a really good sign that perhaps when AMD officially unveils these Ryzen 4000 series processors, there might be a good chance that we'll see a part that boosts to that 5 GHz mark. The mark that which Intel has been happily dangling as a goalpost in front of consumers and AMD for quite some time, as Intel has had parts these last couple of years which can boost to 5 GHz out of the box, but AMD didn't have any CPUs since they released Ryzen, that is, which came close to or boosted to 5 GHz. But do keep in mind, clock speeds aren't everything, and IPC along with latency also do play a big part in real-world performance as well. But we've already heard some rumors in the past where Zen 3 will bring a 10 to 15% IPC increase as well. So when you take those things into account, higher clocks, higher IPC, lower latency, thanks to the unified L3 cache and 8-core CCXs instead of 4-core CCXs, you're looking at many factors here which provide benefits to the design, thus dramatically improving performance. But going back to the topic on hand, TSMC's manufacturing process and the 7nm yields have been coming along nicely this past year, if these engineering samples are any indication of that. It hasn't been confirmed yet if the Ryzen 4000 series will be fabbed on a mature 7nm node, or if they'll be on an entirely new, improved process node like 7nm plus enhanced. Honestly though, I feel like AMD's marketing wouldn't pass up the opportunity to advertise a Halo product that can boost to 5 GHz. Knowing AMD, I feel like they'll definitely try to strive for that goal, and remember, these clock speed and boost clock figures don't really mean much, and it's the actual sustained clock speeds which are even more important. Remember when Ryzen 3000 was released and many people complained about their parts not ever hitting those advertised boost clock figures? There was a whole ongoing issue regarding that, and even AMD had to come out and make an official statement about it where they said that they would be working with motherboard manufacturers to ensure that customers do see correct clock speeds figures via a BIOS update. I did some testing myself in the past, and it was true. With early BIOS revisions, my 3900X never boosted to 4.6 GHz under any real-world test. And it wasn't until the 1003 EVGA update, which came out later on, where I started to see the CPU boost a couple cores to 4.6 GHz, except only in really lightly threaded workloads like browsing the web, for example, or using a Word document, which then you don't really need a lot of CPU power for anyways. Whereas for gaming and workloads such as rendering a video, the average sustained clock speeds were considerably lower than that 4.6 GHz mark. This was a whole mess of a topic, and if you want to check out my videos I've made in the past, definitely do so you can get educated on that. As for AMD and what they're going to do with the Ryzen 4000 series, I think there is a good chance we'll see them go for it. A 5 GHz, 16-core part that they'll tout as the best mainstream CPU period. Best for productivity, best for streaming, and best for gaming. I just hope though that this time around they can actually deliver a part that meaningfully delivers according to those specifications. Regardless though, I am excited for these new parts, and it looks like these next upcoming months in general are going to be quite jam-packed with hardware news, rumors, and leaks, so stay tuned for that. I hope you guys found this video to be informative and helpful. Let me know your thoughts down below. Check out the video description on ways to support the channel and for my other videos. If you guys are interested in more content like this, then make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one.